We all know this is about playoff teams. There's no team that's perfect. We know that to be a fact. There's teams that can contend for the Super Bowl, and then there's teams that are just happy to be in the playoffs. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think at the end of the day, each team has at least one glaring problem that they need to address if they want to win the Super Bowl or at least even compete in the playoffs. And I'm going to give you my list, the 14 playoff teams, the number one weakness that they have that could hold them back from winning a Super Bowl. So let's get the background music going, and let's start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. What's the Pittsburgh Steelers' weakness, you ask? Major limitations at quarterback with Big Ben Roethlisberger. Look, the thing with the Steelers is this. Look, I'm glad he's in the playoffs. One last hurrah. I get that. But, guys, he's not been good this season because Big Ben Roethlisberger ranks 14th in touchdown passes, 14th in yards, 15th in touchdown passes, 24th in passer rating, and 25th in QBR. The Steelers are a team, although they don't stop the run horribly well, and that's also a glaring problem of theirs. They got TJ Watt. He's the Defensive Player of the Year. There's no questions asked about it. He tied Michael Strahan's sack record in less games than Strahan played, if I'm not mistaken. You've got the secondary. Offensively, I think you have playmakers. Juju Smith-Schuster was just activated off of IR today. Najee Harris had a great rookie season. To me, he's runner-up to Jamar Chase for Offensive Rookie of the Year. The offensive line, it's come around. You got that guy, Freiermuth, the tight end they have, who's going to be a really good player. Deontay Johnson. It's just kind of held back by their quarterback. And look, good for Ben that he's in the playoffs, but that's going to be what gets them beat on Sunday night against Kansas City. There's no way they're winning that game. The New England Patriots, the 6th seed in the AFC. Quarterback's limitations have been exposed. I think this is pretty obvious. Mac Jones, I know everybody loves Mac Jones, and as great of a coach as they have and a defense as they have and a running game as they have, it's not going to matter because he's not good enough to go along for that ride to go win a Super Bowl because, A, they'd have to win a road playoff game the whole way through. That's number one. But number two is this. Mac Jones, 13th in passing yards, 15th in passing touchdowns, 15th in passer rating, 15th in QBR. I'm impressed. By the way, the Patriots finished 1-3 in their last 4 games after a 7-game winning streak. And that's in large part because defensive coordinators figured out the Maxter. Because in those 4 games, these last 4 games of the regular season, and by the way, that one win came against the Jaguars, which, hey, Mac Jones did something that Carson Wentz couldn't. But in those games, Mac Jones, 6 touchdowns, 5 picks, and a 51 QBR. And again, those numbers are skewed because that Jaguars game, it's Jacksonville. That's why I was so mad at Carson Wentz. It's Jacksonville. Congratulations. Everybody puts up big numbers against Jacksonville. They're not winning a playoff game. I'm sorry. The limitations at quarterback in New England is going to hold them back. Now to the Vegas Raiders. Defense struggles to get off the field. They were 26th in points allowed. And here's the thing. Look, again, it's cliche, but defense wins championships. We all know this to be true. Defense wins championships in the National Football League, and for the Raiders, they ain't got one. Yes, like Ryan brought up earlier, you've got Max Crosby. You got Ngakoue. You got guys that can get after the quarterback. The secondary is straight up trash. It is horrible. And they tried to address that in the draft, but we all know how John Gruden drafted, and that's horribly. And so just overall as an organization, they cannot seem to find a defensive back. And so you can't win playoff games by just outscoring teams. And against an offense like the Cincinnati Bengals that they're going to play on Saturday afternoon, Burrow, Chase, Mixon, Higgins, Tyler Boyd. I mean, that's a lot of guys for that secondary to have to stop. And I just don't. I think that's going to be what is the end of the Raiders in these playoffs. They cannot stop anybody. The team that they are playing. Speaking of the Cincinnati Bengals, what's their issue? Offensive line cannot protect Burrow whatsoever. Because, and I said this going into the season, I did not like Cincinnati's offensive line because they try to address that need in the draft. And look, it's hindsight's 2020. I said take Penei Sewell. They took Jamar Chase. Clearly that worked out. Clearly I was wrong, even though Penei Sewell's a great player in Detroit. But Joe Burrow was sacked more times than any quarterback in the National Football League 51 times. Second place was Ryan Tannehill. He was sacked 47 times and played one more game than Joe Burrow. And so the offensive line isn't good. So when you're going against the elite defensive lines, the Kansas Cities, possibly if something crazy were to happen, the Pittsburghs or the Buffaloes or the Titans, you can't. Those playmakers like Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, they're irrelevant if Joe Burrow's on his butt the whole game. And that's their issue. That is what's going to get the Cincinnati Bengals beat in the playoffs. My AFC title pick, the Buffalo Bills, what's their issue? Which Josh Allen would he get? That's my question. Which Josh Allen is going to show up on Sunday? Because I thought if you'd asked me a month ago, what's the Bills' biggest problem? I said, it's running the football. But the last 4 games, they've rushed for 159 yards per game on average. So they're running the football plenty well enough. But these last 4, in which the Bills actually closed on a 4-game winning streak, Josh Allen has been hot. Josh Allen has been cold. Josh Allen could go from 300 pass yards and 100 rushing with a 100 passer rating against the Tampa Bay Bucks. And he could turn around a week later to a 44 QBR against the Panthers the next week. He could go from a 100 passer rating against the Patriots in the Bills' biggest game of the season to having the worst game of his career against the Atlanta Falcons and having a 17 passer rating. So which Josh Allen are you going to get? Are you going to get the guy who has the big arm, who's accurate, who moves around well, or are you going to get the guy that can't seem to complete a pass? It's very much like Cam Newton, right? Big, strong guys. Obviously, he doesn't run as well as Cam, but he moves around well enough, big arm. When he's great, it's MVP stuff. When he's bad, it's when it rains, it pours in that regard. So which Josh Allen are you going to get? That's going to be the biggest thing for the Buffalo Bills. The Kansas City Chiefs, the team that's went to back-to-back Super Bowls, what's their biggest problem? Defense is frustratingly inconsistent. And that's the truth. Earlier this season, they were horrible. Middle of the season, nobody could score on them. End of the season, they're right back to being not horrible, but they're still not very good because in the first 7 games of the season for the Chiefs, they gave up on average 29 points per game. In the following 6 games, they gave up 11 points per game. That's basically 3 touchdown difference. But now here in the last 4, they gave up 24 points per game. So it's been up and down. You don't know what you're getting from the Kansas City Chiefs in regards to how they're going to play defensively. And there's some elite offenses in the AFC. Of course, now they've done a good job of stopping the Raiders, but the Raiders are no joke. And you've got Cincinnati, who beat Kansas City just a couple weeks back by pretty much outscoring them. Buffalo dropped 38 on their head in a game earlier this season. And obviously Tennessee with Derrick Henry, they dropped 27 on Kansas City's defense. So you're not going to be playing the Denver Broncos every week. They barely beat Denver, which is a little concerning. But that's the Kansas City Chiefs' biggest and most glaring problem. And then finally, the number 1 seed in the AFC, the team that does not have to play this weekend, the Tennessee Titans. What's their biggest the biggest weakness? What's going to get them beat in the playoffs? Tannehill needs to stay out of the way. And he does. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if the game comes down to Ryan Tannehill, you may be in a little bit of trouble. And the numbers back it up. In the Titans' 2 playoff wins with Ryan Tannehill, he's averaged 80 passing yards, and he's gotten 209 rushing yards, and the defense has only given up 12.5 points per game. In the 2 losses in the playoffs with Ryan Tannehill, the Tennessee Titans have given up 28 points per game, and they've only ran for 68 yards, while Tannehill has thrown for an average of 187. So basically, it's okay, Ryan, we need you to be a game manager. Don't turn the ball over. Be good in the red zone. We'll take it from here. If the defense balls out, if Derrick Henry looks like Derrick Henry and he should be back for the postseason, look out for the Tennessee Titans. As Ryan pointed out and as I pointed out, I think they're the favorites to win the AFC, even over Kansas City, because of the defense and because of the running game that they have, not to mention A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. But don't feel tempted to go to them just because you want to go with them. Go to them. Because you've got the defense, you got the running game, but I think if it comes down to Ryan Tannehill, him beating you with his arm or him winning you a Super Bowl with his arm, I just don't think that's going to happen. Let's transition now to the NFC, starting with the 7-seed Philadelphia Eagles. They struggled mightily against good teams. As a matter of fact, this season, they're 1-7 against teams with a winning record, and the only win came against the Saints, who didn't even make the playoffs. So they're really 0-7 against playoff teams. And then the rest of the way, of course, they're 8-1 against non-playoff teams or teams with a losing record. And so that's the thing that scares me a little bit for Philadelphia. Right? They play well later in the season, and I get they play backups on Saturday, but they got mollywopped by the Dallas Cowboys, 51-26. And again, toward the end there, that was Dallas's backups too. That was Cooper Rush and some of the guys they had in there. And they still just dominated the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Dallas is obviously a lot better than Philadelphia, but I just think it's a glaring problem that you struggle mightily, like against Kansas City or against Tampa, who they're going to play this weekend. They struggle against those teams. I think that's what's going to get them beat in the postseason. Let's go to the team that my Cowboys unfortunately have to play, but I think there's a system to beat them. That's the San Francisco 49ers. Their biggest problem? Same problem as the Titans. Same problem as the Titans. In the 2 playoff wins under Jimmy Garoppolo, or Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, okay? He's thrown for an average of 104 yards, so he's barely cracked 100. But he's gotten help from the defense that's only given up 15 points per game, and the running game has given him 235 yards. So the running game doesn't have to be good. It has to be otherworldly, as well as the defense, in order for the 49ers to contend for a Super Bowl, which I still think they can. I don't think you want to run into this team. That's why I didn't want the Cowboys to run into this team in the playoffs. Get the game to Jimmy Garoppolo if you're the Cowboys defense. If you do, you should be good. Because in the Super Bowl loss against Kansas City, Jimmy G threw for 219 while he got 141 yards. Still good, but the defense gave up 31. So he's completely... Listen, we all know quarterbacks need help from defense and running game. That's a well-known fact. But then there's quarterbacks who completely rely on it. And Jimmy Garoppolo and Ryan Tannehill, this is why I said they have the same problem as the Titans. Those two are those guys. And so I think that's what's going to get the 49ers beat in the postseason. Let's go now to a division rival, the Cardinals, the 49ers. It is the Arizona Cardinals. What's their biggest issue? Kingsbury's inability to adjust. Because in his 3 years as the Cardinals head coach, in 2019, 2020, 2021, from November on to the end of each of those seasons, he has a combined record of 9-16. What does that mean? It means that once we get to November, we know who's good and we know who's not. We know who's good and we know who's great. And Cliff Kingsbury has shown an inability to adjust to coordinators and other head coaches getting film on his Arizona Cardinals. By the way, he dealt with the same issue at Texas Tech. Look at his record late in seasons over there. He struggled. And so at the end of the day for the Cardinals, it's, can your head coach adjust? And I'm not real sure he can. And that's what I think is going to be the downfall of the Arizona Cardinals this year. The team that they are playing, a division rival of theirs this weekend, the Los Angeles Rams, what's their issue? It's a little long. Despite veteran roster, quarterback underperforms in big moments. And it's true. Matthew Stafford is 0-3 in playoff games. This is his 13th year in the league now, right? It's put up or shut up time, as I said when he was traded to Los Angeles. He's got the defense, got the running game, got the weapons, got the coach, got the special teams even. In the last month, Matthew Stafford has not played well, okay? Because he's thrown 8 touchdowns and thrown the same number of picks. So 8 touchdowns, but 8 picks in the last 4 games with an average QBR of 52. So middle of the pack. He's had games against the Vikings where he's horrible. He throws 3 interceptions, but the defense bails him out. I'm not saying he's Jimmy Garoppolo or Ryan Tannehill, in which he's completely reliant on defense and running game in order to win. But when they're not working, I feel like the Rams are going to kind of come crash into a screeching halt. Or I'm sorry, they're going to come to a screeching halt because that's going to be the end of their season. Moving on to my Cowboys. This is a painful one, but it's true. Horrendous kicking game and even worse, clock management. We all know about the clock management. It speaks for itself. Mike McCarthy does not know how to run the clock. That was evidence in his days in Green Bay. We know that. But Greg Zuerlein, I don't know what's happened. He was decent last year. This year, he's come apart. You can't rely on him to make extra points. He makes the big kicks, But the 35-yarders, he shanks or he pulls. We act like kickers aren't that valuable. Ask Baltimore how valuable Justin Tucker is. That man has won them playoff games. Literally, he's won them playoff games. If the season comes down to the foot of Greg Zuerlein, I am terrified. If it comes down to clock management, I may not even watch the TV. It's that scary for me as a Cowboys fan. Now to the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're falling apart physically. That's the Bucs' issue. Key guys are beat up for them. Look, everybody's beat up this point of year, but for Tampa, it is very, very important players that are either down or are really fighting through some pretty serious injuries, because for the Bucs, Fournette, Barrett, JPP are all nursing injuries. They're all coming back from pretty serious injuries, though, right? Mike Evans is beat up. You have Levante David and Jamel Dean, two key players in that defense, especially Levante David, who's a beast, who are still out due to injury. And, of course, you have Chris Godwin, who's gone for the year. And, of course, you have the Antonio Brown situation, which speaks for itself. But this is a team that I think physically is reeling a little bit. And so, like I said, if Tom Brady pulls this off, he's already the GOAT, so I don't even know what I do at that point. If he pulls this off with a roster that's falling apart, I don't even know what to say. And then finally, the 1 seed in the NFC, the Green Bay Packers. Run defense and special teams are a disaster. And they are. The Packers rank 22nd in the National Football League in special teams. And in regards to their rushing defense, it's ranked 11th in the NFL. You're like, okay, how's that a disaster? It's 11th. That's up there. Here's the problem. Their offense has built them leads in so many games, it doesn't matter. And keep in mind, Green Bay plays in the worst division in football. Yards per carry, you know where the Packers rank? Yards per carry given up, rather. You know where the Packers rank? Third to last. Only the Steelers and the Chiefs are worse. And so, you ain't going to be playing the Chicago Bears in the playoffs. Or the Minnesota Vikings. You darn sure aren't going to be playing the Detroit Lions. And so, against these teams that can run the football, the Rams, the 49ers, the Bucks, the Cowboys, that's going to be an issue. Like, you're going to be in close games in the playoffs. You're not just going to blow through everybody like you did your own division. And special teams-wise, Mason Crosby has gone completely south. And they make some mistakes on special teams that are undisciplined penalties, or they'll let Jakeem Grant go 97 yards to the house in a Sunday night game I watched. So, Aaron Rodgers is great, 7-8 in the playoffs since that Super Bowl, but that's neither here nor there. You know, Aaron struggles, but to me, he's not the biggest issue for the Packers this postseason. By the way, I don't even trust Matt LaFleur either. But that's the problem with these 14 teams. Maybe it's a sort of a negative segment. I hope I didn't come across as that. But look, no team is perfect.